Did you know that Ireland doesn't have any native snakes? None. And yet, one of the most famous stories about St. Patrick is that he banished them from the island.
Wait, so the whole snake banishing thing is just not true?
Exactly. It's one of those myths that's more symbolic than factual. But it's fascinating, right? The story of St. Patrick is full of these kinds of twists, things we think we know, but turn out to be way more complicated or even completely made up.
That's already blowing my mind. So, what's the real story behind St. Patrick and this holiday that's gone global?
Well, let's start with Patrick himself. First off, he wasn't even Irish. Most historians believe he was born in Roman Britain, likely somewhere in modern-day England, Wales or Scotland. And his real name wasn't Patrick either, it was probably Maewyn Succat.
Maewyn Succat? That doesn't exactly scream patron saint of Ireland.
Right? But here's where it gets really interesting. As a teenager, Patrick was kidnapped by Irish raiders and enslaved. He spent 6 years herding sheep in the west of Ireland before he managed to escape and return home.
That's such a dramatic start to his story. So he wasn't just some saintly figure who decided to spread Christianity in Ireland. He was a victim of human trafficking.
Exactly. And what's even more remarkable is that after escaping, he chose to go back to Ireland as a missionary. He returned to the very place where he'd been enslaved, but this time with a mission to convert the Irish to Christianity.
That's such a powerful story. It's about resilience, but also about confronting your past in a way that's almost unimaginable.
Totally. And his story didn't just shape Ireland, it shaped Irish identity globally. St. Patrick's Day, as we know it today, became a worldwide phenomenon because of Irish migration. The diaspora carried their traditions with them, and the holiday grew into something much bigger than its origins.
So, were the big parades always a thing in Ireland?
Actually, no. Some of the earliest large-scale St. Patrick's Day parades happened in New York, not Dublin. They were often organised by Irish soldiers serving in the British Army. It wasn't until much later that parades became a central part of the holiday in Ireland itself.
That's so interesting. It's like the Irish abroad were the ones who really amplified the celebration.
Exactly. And then there's the shamrock, which is probably the most iconic symbol of the holiday. Legend has it that Patrick used the 3-leaf shamrock to explain the Christian Trinity, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit.
That's a great visual metaphor, but did he actually do that?
Honestly, there's no solid evidence that he did. The shamrock was already a native plant in Ireland, so he didn't introduce it. But the story stuck, and over time the shamrock became a symbol of Irish identity.
That's so interesting. It's like the shamrock took on a life of its own, becoming this emblem of Ireland and its people.
Exactly. And then there's the whole thing about Patrick banishing snakes from Ireland. You've heard that one, right?
Oh, of course. It's one of the most famous parts of the story. But let me guess, it's not true.
You guessed it. Ireland hasn't had any native snakes since the last ice age. The island's climate and geography just aren't conducive to snakes. The story is widely understood as symbolic. The snakes Patrick supposedly banished likely represent older pagan beliefs that faded as Christianity spread.
That makes sense. It's like a metaphor for cultural and religious transformation.
Exactly. And here's a fun side note. Did you know Ireland also doesn't have moles?
Moles, like the little burrowing animals?
Yep. No moles in Ireland. I find that oddly fascinating.
That is fascinating. It's like Ireland has this whole no unwanted critters vibe going on.
Pretty much. Now let's talk about leprechauns. They're such a big part of St. Patrick's Day imagery now, but their origins are way older.
I've always wondered about that. Where did leprechauns come from?
They're from Irish folklore. Originally, leprechauns were solitary fairy shoemakers known for their mischief. They weren't these cheerful, green-clad parade mascots we see today. That transformation happened gradually, blending folklore with marketing.
So, basically they got commercialized.
Exactly. And speaking of green, did you know that green wasn't originally associated with St. Patrick?
Wait, what? But everything about the holiday is green. The clothes, the decorations, even the rivers in some places.
I know, but for centuries, Patrick was actually linked to a soft sky blue colour, sometimes called St. Patrick's blue. It appeared in early iconography and even in Ireland's historic coat of arms. Green only became dominant in the 18th and 19th centuries as the shamrock and the Emerald Isle became symbols of Irish nationalism and pride.
That's such a shift. It's amazing how symbols evolve over time.
It really is. And the way the holiday is celebrated has evolved too. For much of the 20th century in Ireland, St. Patrick's Day was primarily a religious feast. Pubs were actually closed by law, and because it falls during Lent, the celebration was often just the temporary lifting of fasting restrictions.
That's such a contrast to the way it's celebrated now, with all the parties and parades.
Totally. And today, the holiday is celebrated in places you might not expect. Tokyo, for example, has a big St. Patrick's Day parade in Yoyogi Park. And on the Caribbean island of Montserrat, it's a public holiday because of the island's Irish heritage.
That's incredible. It really has become a global celebration.
It has. And when you think about it, the holiday's journey mirrors Patrick's own story. A story shaped by migration, resilience, and evolving identity.
That's such a beautiful way to look at it. So, next time I see a shamrock or a green river, I'll remember there's so much more to the story.
Exactly. It's not just about the decorations, it's about the history and the connections that tie people together across time and place.
I love that. Let's raise a glass, or maybe a shamrock, to that.
Cheers to that.